Sand and deep gravel on a big bike are tough, no doubt about it. However, once you get the hang of it, they are incredibly fun to ride. Riverbeds like this, for me, are one of the most enjoyable things you can ride on an adventure bike. And so, let's get into some tips that are gonna make it a bit easier.
Hey man, how do you ride in sand?
Just lean back and hold it wide open.
Huh.
Everything we do when we ride off-road starts with great body position. Now, if you've watched a lot of Dakar or any kind of sand racing, you'll have seen at some point someone hanging way off the back of the bike going really quickly. However, things are a little bit more complicated than that in life. And like anything, standing position on an adventure bike is nuanced. Good technique, if we're trying to ride sand or deep gravel, is very much rooted in solving one simple problem. Look at this clip. You see when I shut the throttle here, how the stones suck the front wheel in and it tucks? That's why sand-like terrain is so tough. So we really need to tweak our technique to fix that problem. So how do we do that? We fix it by changing our body position. Now, all the normal rules still apply here to good riding technique. We need those heels down. We need to be hinging at the hips, and we need our hands on top of the bars. The initial tweak is to move our center line backwards slightly to take the weight off the front wheel. The important thing to understand here is that this isn't one static position that we hold forever. It changes constantly with the speed we're doing, going around corners, bumps, etc. Now, sometimes I'm way over the back of the bike, but for example, if I try to go through a corner in this position with my arms super straight, that can be pretty difficult. So with that in mind, there is no golden rule to the good technique. There's a little bit of nuance, there's a ton of practice you've got to do, and we need to do this with an understanding of the end goal in mind. Now, what about this guy, the throttle? He said a minute ago, we need to be absolutely full gas. Well, actually, he's not super far away from the mark, but he's missing one key ingredient: brain processing power. When a skill is new, we don't have the information to predict what will happen as we ride. I know from experience what is likely to happen in this corner. A person new to this terrain won't. This means if we do something too quickly, over time, our brain is going to run out of capacity to process all that new information before we run out of power. And when that happens, especially if we're relying on the throttle to keep us out of trouble, we're going to have a monumental crash. Really hard, really big. Now back to the point. In sand or deep gravel, we do need to use the throttle to keep the front wheel light. Acceleration squats the bike at the rear, which is very helpful because that lightens the front. Now, I ride these riverbeds at a speed that I can deal with all of the sensory input, the changes in terrain, the changes in softness, the rocks, the water, everything that's going on, the difficult to read ground because of the shadows, all of it. You've got to find that speed that works for you. But I want to find a speed where I also can keep a constant throttle to stop that front diving in. And you can hear how smooth and constant I'm trying to be with the throttle as I pass the camera in this next clip. Now, eventually, we're going to find ourselves in a situation where we are going way too quickly for the upcoming obstacle. It is inevitable. But if you were a Patreon member, you'd have seen this video already. You'd have seen loads of others that have never even made it to YouTube. How to lift the front wheel, how to change ruts, and so on. So, if you want to see more of that, click the link in the description. And otherwise, let's get back to the good stuff. And to deal with that inevitable situation where we are going too fast, we need to find a way to slow the bike down. We need to do that without adding too much weight to the front wheel because that tucks it into the ground. How do we do this? The rear brake. The rear brake is your best friend in deep gravel and sand. We're going to slow using our rear brake, and then everything else we're going to do by driving with the throttle. In this terrain, it's a little dance with hopefully not a ton of time between using the brake and driving. Now, the less delay between the two, the throttle and the brake, the easier it becomes to consistently keep the weight towards the rear of the bike and keep it lower at the back. I think that makes sense anyway. Now let's take a look at this clip. Heading toward the corner I'm driving when I suddenly realize I need to slow down. I start braking with the rear brake to pull the back of the bike down. See how at this moment I'm back on the throttle and I'm trying to do so relatively early. And that is the key here. It's easier said than done, but what we're looking for is to be either driving or dragging the rear brake to slow down and not having too much time off in between.
What do you do about tire pressures?
Whoa, stop. At the risk of starting World War III, we need to address the tires. Now in this video, I am riding a bike I truly love, the BMW R1250 GS. I think it's a wonderful bike. However, this guy, the 19-inch front wheel, that's not very helpful here. See, the wider footprint of the 19 inches gets pulled around a lot compared to a narrower 21-inch wheel. It's a fact of life that we cannot ignore. As for tire pressure, on this GS, I'm running the recommended pressure for off-road for the Karoo 4s fitted. Is that too much pressure for riding sand? Yeah, it is too much pressure. I don't care. In theory, a lower pressure equals a wider footprint. That makes it easier to stay on top of the sand. However, we have some practical limitations, and so here are some good guidelines. Now, if you're learning and you're riding a lot of sand, I think airing down your tires is a great life choice. Having a bike that's easier to ride, more effective in the terrain you're riding it in, it's going to allow you to learn to ride quicker. Makes a lot of sense. However, in a practical adventure riding scenario, I never air down my tires. It takes an age to air down and air up, and it's rare that you're crossing huge sections without coming back to harder terrain or sections with rock in it. Even then, sometimes adventure style tires are not very good at low pressures. Often you need to run incredibly low pressures as well to get them to work better, something like 1 bar. So the next time you're drinking a beer and a mate of yours asks about how to ride sand, hopefully you can give them a slightly more detailed answer than go fast, take chances.